Well, again, thank you everyone for joining me with Heather Montgomery, founder and CEO of Please Me, a tech leader, a media disruptor, an innovator, an educator in sexual wellness, for our discussion today about stepping into your sexual power to propel your business and personal relationships forward. And I'm Linda Fisk. I'm the CEO of LeadHERship Global, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome you to the program today. LeadHERship Global is the most impactful community of extraordinary women in the world. We unleash the full potential of high-performing and growth-oriented leaders in a confidential, supportive, and private community. LeadHERship Global helps members accelerate their success by defining their vision, growing their leadership, expanding their influence, and leaving a lasting legacy. So if you're interested in learning more about this remarkable community of women that are leading across business, entertainment, and politics, then please reach out. But let's jump into today's conversation. You know, Oscar Wilde has a famous quote that says, "Everything in life is about sex except sex. Sex is all about power." So what does sexuality have to do with women's empowerment? Well, research shows that sexuality affects women's political and economic empowerment in a number of important ways. Well-being depends, among other things, on making choices about your own body, your sexuality, and your identity. And those choices can affect many aspects of your life, including your work, your means to earn a living, your family relationships, your opportunities to participate in formal and informal politics, and even your access to education. So looking at women's empowerment through a sexuality lens adds something very valuable to our efforts to create a positive approach to sexuality, promoting the empowerment of women. So I am so glad that all of you have joined us for this fascinating discussion to increase your happiness quotient, improve your sexual health and well-being. And I hope after today, you come away with an understanding of the 4 pillars that provide the foundation for sex positivity and power. I'm so glad you're here with us to take an empowering look into how sex may be impacting your life. This event could not have taken place without the support and help and guidance of Heather Montgomery. She's going to introduce you to new insights and impactful resources to support this important aspect of your life. So let me tell you a little bit about Heather before we get going. She is a tech leader, a media disruptor, innovator, and educator, and she is a world-class, leading-edge revolutionary in the media industry, focusing on sex-positive content and conversations between adults as the new norm. She invites all of us to experience the joy of being fully integrated with our sexuality. And to do so, one may need to actually reprogram some of our entrenched beliefs, psychologically, physiologically, and even behaviorally. So it may require that we rethink existing paradigms for new possibilities to be experienced, as the freedom of access to healthful sexual content is absolutely necessary to evolve this part of our being. As the founder and CEO of Please Me, she actually challenges the status quo as it relates to the way that people treat sex in life and in society, especially for women. Welcome, Heather.
Oh, thank you, Linda. It's such an honor to be a part of LeadHERship Global and to be here today with all of these amazing trailblazers, I'm sure. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Heather, to kick us off, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your journey? What's led you to have such passion around this idea of sexual empowerment for women?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like most people, a lot of times what leads us to places is our discomfort more than our comfort, and or a desire to improve something that maybe isn't working so well. And in this case, it really wasn't much different than that story. I had been married twice and divorced twice, single mom of 2 boys. I've worked in male-dominated fields most of my life, half of that spent in pants and button-down male shirts and sport coats and fake wedding rings so that I wouldn't get hit on or have my sexuality impede my career and or my sale of whatever widget I was selling at that moment, usually advertising. And so I guess you can say that I got tired of the fact that my experiences in and around relationships, and then, of course, consequently sex, tended to have a negative impact on my overall well-being. I spent 15 years of my life in health and wellness, so training doctors, cardiologists, internal medicine, OBGYNs, and other subspecialties on natural health, well-being, advanced clinical therapies, advanced clinical testing. How do we get people more health tools earlier and let them stay out of the doctor's office, right? It was basically the same focus, which is improving your quality of life. That's always been my gig, right? I really wanted to help people improve that quality of life. And what I realized in my own life was that as much as I was healthy from a physical standpoint, the mental, emotional, and spiritual sides of what we call the triad of health would complicate my beautiful, healthy physical state. Basically, there's a saying, if the mind suffers, the body cries out. And so I was realizing that when those relationships were going bad, when I was fighting with my husband, when I was going through a divorce, when I was having non-satisfying sexual experiences and then waking up the next day and feeling disappointed or shameful or, judgmental of myself because I wasn't married or there wasn't all these certain things I was told or required when I was a child, that it was conflicting on the inside. And there was one thing I really knew for sure, and that was I didn't want to keep recreating the same mistakes as it pertained to the love interest in my life and that personal piece. And when I thought back and reflected on it, I went online to look for tools and resources because I didn't want to go to my friends. I didn't want to go to my family all the time. I wasn't really ready to go see a counselor to talk about sexual hangups or traumas that I had had at a young age and actually physically look somebody in the eye and say, this happened to me and this is how I felt about it. Just wasn't ready to do those things, but I knew that I wanted to work through them. I just wanted a little anonymity to do that. I understand that, we don't need to be ashamed of our sexuality, but it is still private. And not everybody is entitled to learn every little detail about what's going on behind closed doors or with my relationship or in the bedroom or in my head, even about my desires. And I didn't feel like traditional social media held a good resource for that because everybody was watching every little thing that I did. I went online and did Google searches and ended up on websites and really didn't know how credible or reliable those sources were. Going into chat rooms, it was difficult to find the topics I wanted. And again, who am I talking to and what are we talking about? And is this safe? And is this a place where I actually have privacy? And as women, there's so much stigma and judgment and shame. You'll see, we've all experienced this. Guys go out and say, ooh, another conquest last night. They're like, high five, who's the slut? And it's like, wait a minute, why is the guy getting celebrated for having an enjoyable sexual encounter and the woman is like demonized for it? There were two same people having that same encounter, but there seemed to be a societal general acceptance for the man's behavior in that and not a lack of acceptance, and worse than that, negative judgment and shame towards the female component in that equation. And I just really felt like that wasn't fair. And why does that get to continue? And, there are other problems that we face around, child sex trafficking and people abusing the internet to share things that are illegal or hurtful or harmful. And because of that, healthy sexuality was getting a bad rap and getting censored and shut down and harder to access in this critical area of our lives. So what really led me to this was a realization that things needed to change if we wanted things to change, and that we can't just delete everything and pretend like it doesn't exist as a solution. And so really, I just felt like we would be able to create a place where we would ensure that people are safe. We could get the best of the best resources to come onto this platform and share their amazing information. And I am not a sexpert. I was the most sexually repressed, relationship troubled. That was the area of my life that needed the most support and still does. Right now I'm going through a breakup, like just because I'm researching and learning, I'm still evolving and growing and looking at those 4 pillars. And really there's 5 if I really were to drum it all down, and making sure that I'm applying them all in my life the way that I really want to create the life and relationship of my dreams. And I felt if I felt that way, there had to be other women that felt similarly, that would align with this, that would need this, that would want this. And then I said, we really need all sides of the equation there. We need the men here too, having this tool and resource to hear the other side of the story, to collaborate with. I don't believe in overthrowing a patriarchy with a matriarchy. I think we need to create a co-creative society in which both the masculine, feminine, or the feminine, divine feminine, and divine masculine are working in unison together to create a new world. So I said, everybody needs to be here. We all need to learn from each other, whether that's race, age, creed, religion, gender, preference, relationship style. And I wanted there to be that suspension of judgment of ourselves and others for a bit, and a little bit of privacy to explore.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for sharing that. And one thing that I know we've talked about is that women need control over their bodies. They need to be able to assert their right to physical autonomy and protection from abuse, and realize sexual rights, such as the right to a safe and satisfying sex life. And if they don't have that, women have limited scope for making claims to other areas of their life. So this idea of sexuality really is integral to women's political and economic empowerment as well. So how can women begin to assert their sexual rights, which has such a big impact on their political and economic empowerment as well?
It's a great question. And I think I'm going to take a sidestep a little bit to go into the 4 pillars. Because having the confidence to step up and assert that right comes from having confidence in this area of your life. Like when you're traumatized, when you're feeling like you're coming from a lack of knowledge, when you're feeling unsafe, like you've been, treated a certain way in a workplace, or not even necessarily me too, but like, I don't feel like my voice has the same power as that person's voice. It doesn't have to be like I was sexually, what's the word I'm looking for, in the workplace, not assaulted. The Me Too movement, it was, thank you, harassment. It's not just about harassment. It's about not feeling like you're on an equal footing with your male counterparts in a job environment, right? And when you're, how do I say this? Don't feel confident asserting, hey, that's not okay what you just said, but this is a warning, like, it's okay. I know that this is an interesting landscape to try to navigate because people find each other attractive. And let's be honest, a lot of us don't mind a compliment if it's not hooked with a innuendo, right? And men have a hard time even understanding too now how to navigate this space. Like there's like a recent survey that was like, how many people actually are afraid to go meet in a public place where there's alcohol involved? And as we saw the Me Too movement, we saw this really strange division happen between men and women, and people not going to gatherings together and not congregating around the water cooler and creating teams because everybody was afraid, or the men were afraid, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing and do the wrong thing. So I think a lot of that has we women, when we have self-love and sexual wellness, where we've gone in and we've looked at traumas that we may have had in the past, whether that be harassment or assault or child molestation or anything around sex and sexuality that took us from, hey, this is fun and healthy, to, oh my God, this is scary and hurtful, right? And working through that and understanding that that doesn't need to be the way the future is, that we can heal those wounds and develop what we call adult identities. And what happens in trauma of any kind is that it actually, hi son, that it actually changes the neural pathways in our brain. And as we get older and when the traumas happen younger, we literally struggle to develop an adult identity, which we need in order to make decisions, which we need in order to exert boundaries and feel confident to move forward and make those, I'm going to go out in the world and start a company, or I'm going to go be the top salesperson in my field, or, oh, there's no reason why a woman can't do walking on the moon, or, building the space shuttle, or whatever those things that maybe are new frontiers for women in their life. It really all starts with that personal core beliefs. What I'm doing is okay. I like it. It fits my lifestyle. I'm okay. I'm not conflicted on an inner perspective. Do I love myself? And have I gone through the steps that it takes to heal traumas? And listen, some traumas take a long time to heal and some take a minute. And it's not always, yes, I'm all healed now, but at least you're moving toward feeling more confident and healthy. And then understanding really, what do you want? It's so simple. Like, what do you want in sex, in the bedroom, in a relationship? And what are my boundaries? So my preferences, my desires, my boundaries, am I absolutely no going past this? This is a hard no for me. Makes it much easier to communicate consent. And when you're not wishy-washy about whether you're willing to do something or not, that's another time when consent gets violated, and maybe neither party meant to violate consent, but we're like, I don't know, am I going to like that? Am I not going to like that? Maybe I let him push me a little bit in that direction. But then you go, oh God, I didn't really like that. I wish I would have never done that. I feel violated. And that can happen too, in a very accidental way, if we ourselves don't know what our boundaries are, and have a problem with that self-confidence to exert those boundaries. And that can be not just those areas of when you're in the bedroom having intimacy with somebody, but when you're at work and somebody crosses what you would call a professional and or complementary boundary versus you're making me feel uncomfortable. And I feel like it's an advancement that's not warranted or was rejected and then still pursued, which is definitely nothing anybody wants to feel. And or if it's somebody in a position of power in your life or around you, whether that's at home or in your family or at work, that they're wielding that power to intimidate you into doing something that you don't want to do because you feel like, if I don't, then there's a consequence, right? Which is really the epitome of sexual harassment, which is why everybody was out of their mind when the Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing came out, right? It's like, too young, too powerful, there's no way to blame this young girl in that environment. Not that she was totally innocent, but how dare you do that even in the first place? You're the older, wiser person in a position of power that should not have taken advantage of somebody so young. And I think all of us can go, that's a perfect example of not okay, right? And there's plenty of those. I don't mean to call out any particular political party, but I think that was the first time we saw it on such a huge global scale, where it was a president of the free world, and in what was really easily seen as sexual harassment. Like JFK and Marilyn Monroe, a little different than that. Wasn't an intern working on their team, serving the most powerful man in the world. So at the time, it's that confidence in yourself. It's that understanding of that you are entitled to those boundaries. And we're in a time and a place, I think, in the world where Me Too really blew the doors open from women. In that movie Bombshell, if you guys saw Bombshell, about the media and the casting. I mean, we saw Harvey Weinstein, I think that's his name, the Weinstein brothers. So it's become okay for women now. And I say okay, not that we needed it to be okay, but we're more believed. People believe us now, and there's more support of women for women around this topic. And I think there's a lot more men who are like the good actors who aren't abusing that power, that are ready to stand up next to us and say, not okay. And leaders of companies and women-owned boards of directors and C-suite executives in companies that have employees are putting together better policies. And women are more free to walk up and say, hey, I think this policy needs to be amended because this is what happened to me. And this is something that could continue to happen again if we don't modify our policy. And so we don't get penalized as much for speaking up and speaking out. And the more of us that, how do I say this, be courageous about those boundaries and getting to a place where we feel comfortable, even in your own relationship with a significant other. When you're not in the mood, like we say in the industry, consent is a daily activity. Just because you're married doesn't mean that they get to do whatever they want. Every day when you enter into an intimate exchange, consent should be discussed. Today, do you feel like having sex? No, I don't. Then I'm not going to try. Or they make a slight advance and we go, you know what? I'm emotionally dealing with something. I'm exhausted. I just don't want to feel like I have to do that today when I'm not in the mood to do that. Is another example. And that's why we say empowering all your personal relationships, because the more confidence you have to have those discussions and put some actual, well, this is why I feel that way today. And it doesn't have anything to do with you, but it has to do with this and being vulnerable and sharing, because I have that self-love, I have that confidence around the subject, I've learned how to talk about it, can really empower your partner to feel more confident in your relationship, more willing to come to you to talk about things that they want or don't want. And it allows a deeper level of trust, respect, and intimacy. And that's the same whether it's your spouse or somebody you're dating or a colleague at work, or even when we're teaching our children about these questions when they come back from school and ask us. I remember with my first son, oh God, I was so just, what? You want to talk about what? We'll talk about that tomorrow. You know, now my younger son gets a different experience. Yeah.
That's great. So let me just be sure that for those in the audience that are taking notes, that we just quickly recap the 4 pillars, 1, 2, 3, and 4, just so that everyone caught the 4 pillars of sexual power to propel your personal and business relationships forward. So can you recap that for us real quick, Heather?
Yeah, I think number 1 for me and how I've gone through my journey and exploration, it starts with core beliefs, and core beliefs about sex and sexuality, and what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And I mean, for you, right, personally, what do you think you are in alignment with, or what do you think you're out of alignment with? And that may change as you age, right? And it may change in either direction as you age. So as you're getting older, you might go, yes, I'm really okay with all these things. I think that's wonderful and great, and I want to explore and expand. And then you get to a point and you go, nope, I really want to go back to more traditional because that really aligns more with my core beliefs. I did a little experimenting, wasn't for me, going over here. And that core belief conversation can happen daily if you needed to, right? It's not like, oh, these are my core beliefs and I'm never going to change them. But it is good to have those deep discussions with yourself. And if you're not sure, go get some education or speak to somebody who is maybe a relationship or sexologist and or trauma specialist, because a lot of core beliefs come out of conditional programming, or not programming, education, conditional environmental things. Like people in countries like China have very different core beliefs than people in countries like Germany, for example. 2 very extremely different rationalities and
so that's number 1 is core beliefs, right? Okay.
Yeah. And number 2, self-love. And I know everybody talks about this subject a lot, like, oh, it's important to love yourself. I also like to lump in there acceptance, being in alignment with those core beliefs, because as soon as you're out of alignment with your core beliefs, there is a direct correlation to the amount that you can love yourself, because you're like, I'm not doing I'm out of alignment with what I believe or what I want. And so now I beat myself up for that. I have shame and guilt around that. And then that self-love becomes something out here that I just can't obtain. because I'm so far out of alignment. And then the other part of self-love, I call sexual wellness. And that is, really body consciousness. How do I feel about my body? How do I feel about the intimate interactions with a partner? Am I comfortable? Am I not comfortable? Do I take care of my sexual organs, my cycles, my hormones, my physical well-being when it comes to sexual wellness? So that's kind of all encompassed in that self-love pillar. And then number 3 is what you desire, and your boundaries of where your consent would get, skewed. And like I said, that can change even from a day to day, but it's really helpful when you know what is a no, and you know what is a yes, and you know what is a maybe. And then you can confidently, because you have your core beliefs in order and your self-love and sexual wellness ready, you can go communicate that with somebody before you get into an intimate situation, or during, when something comes up that's out of alignment with your preferences, your core beliefs, or would take you out of your self-love. And I probably should put that last, because healing trauma is really important. So identifying if you have trauma, and trauma can be a broken heart, not just necessarily a rape or a sexual molestation or a sexual harassment situation, but it can literally be a broken heart. And have you healed, or looked at and identified how that event or events or feelings affect you? And if they are affecting your current relationships, which I promise you they are, if you haven't addressed them. And then getting the healing and support needed at your own pace. This is your journey, to make sure that they have as little negative impact as possible. I can just share with you that I had a trauma at 5 with some people that were babysitting me. And because of that, it affected my ability to experience pleasure and or have any desire for any kind of oral sexual experience. And so for 37 years, it was just a no, not for me, not to me, and not me doing it to anyone else. And then at some point in my life, in a marriage, and when you're with a partner and you're like, we should be able to experience this, I realized I was really allowing those 2 16-year-old boys to affect my life. That event only lasted maybe 30, 40 minutes, maybe whoever knows how long it was. But that 30 minutes was affecting everything from that moment up to the 37th year when I said, no more. Am I going to give my power away to those 2 boys 37 years ago, or 32 years ago? And I decided to take that healing on at that time and stop ignoring it, pretending like it didn't exist, being ashamed of it, running away from it. I heard from a healer that does sexual healing trauma. She says, what we conceal kills us. So we try to conceal this and push it down and push it down and push it down, like it's just never gonna, we just don't want to look at it, but it has daily ramifications if we don't address it. So it's really a key pillar, and not everybody has sexual trauma. Thank God if you don't, and I'm pleased and as punch for you. But most of us have had some kind of a disappointment or a broken heart, I think, at some point, that could also, we can learn from and heal.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And so to me, that those 4 pillars are very clear, but I would invite anyone that has questions about any aspect of what Heather just described to add it to the chat, so we can talk a little bit about that. And Heather, now I want to dive into business relationships a little bit. In anticipation of this conversation today, I actually received a lot of email about the connection between sexual power and propelling your business relationships forward. And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of buzz, and a lot of confusion around how those 2 ideas are related, between sexual power and propelling business relationships forward. So can you make that connection for us and explain a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And I'm going to make it in a negative way first. I'm going to explain how, whether you like it or whether you don't, there is a connection here. And that is very simply, how many times have we ever said or heard, that woman just slept her way to the top? Anybody ever heard that? Right? And or people saying, I was afraid that if I didn't take on those sexual advances from my boss, that I would not be able to progress in my career. And or because I had sexual advances from my boss and I turned him down, I lost my career, right? So let's just start from that very basic perspective. It does affect your relationships. It does affect the workplace. That's the negative aspect. So instead of us as women going, oh my God, please don't let it happen to me. Please don't let it happen to me. Please don't let it happen to me. We have the opportunity and the ability to say, I'm going to step into this personal power that I have, because when I do have healthy relationships, and I'll use the positive aspect, I'm in a relationship, I wake up in the morning, my spouse and I have a beautiful hug and a kiss, good morning. We don't have any arguments. We say, have a great day, sweetie. I hope you get out there and you kill that, proposal and you get that big client, or I hope your company takes a huge jump forward today and that your teammates are amazing. What kind of a day do we have? Is it a good day or is it a bad day for the most part when we know we have that deep, positive connection and support? And I'm just going to answer for you guys. We have a much better chance of it being a positive, wonderful day, that energy keeps going. But when you wake up in the morning and you had a fight the night before that you didn't finish, and you get up and you get right back into it, and it's you don't love me, you don't care about me, and we didn't have any hugs, we didn't have any kisses. Usually that energy kind of permeates the rest of your day, and it gives you a lack of confidence. You go into work going, oh my God, all I can think about is what I'm going to say to him when I get home, or I don't want to get home, or just want this day to get over. And that has like a negative impact on just your general well-being. And it's the same for guys. Maybe they can compartmentalize it a little bit more than us women, but they feel it too. And so, and if you're in a same-sex relationship, I don't mean to exclude you, it's no different. That personal connection, that love connection, and that intimacy that you have with that partner or partners every day has an effect on you. So if you say, I'm going to step into this part of my life, I understand that sex is a part of my intimate relationship with my significant other, because there's really, unless you're asexual, no way to say separate that. And if this part of my relationship is as positive as it can be, then when I walk into work and I have a guy come up to me and say something inappropriate, I'm like, thank you so much for the compliment. However, I really don't feel like that was appropriate, or this is the place, but I understand that this is a first offense, so just please honor my boundaries. I really just want to have a good working relationship with you. When I was younger, I didn't really know how to do that, because I didn't even have my own sexual confidence or beliefs. I just was like, please don't, wearing men's clothes and avoiding those things and lying about being in a relationship, because I didn't have the confidence to just put it on the line. And I think that people admire you for courage, and they admire you for confidence, and they admire you for having boundaries and being willing to exert them. So when you're in the ladder climb of a company and a boss or colleagues see that you have that persona that is not afraid to speak their mind, to listen to other people, to exert their boundaries, to make decisions, to be a positive energy and impact on the office, because you're not coming in, oh, my relationship's terrible and I'm always in a fight with my husband, and oh, I'm sorry I'm late for this appointment, I'm sorry I didn't get that proposal done, or I'm sorry because I'm a disaster and I'm a mess in my personal life. You're not going to get promoted, or you're not going to elevate your status in your company, or you're not going to elevate your company's status, depending on what role you play. And you're not going to have the confidence to go after what you want. And that is even in a healthy relationship in the office. Like if you're able to say, hey, I'd like to be your friend, but here's my boundaries. Don't cross them and don't misunderstand me. I'm not making a pass at you, even though you're kind of cute. That confidence keeps people from treating you like a victim and taking advantage of you. And it's getting rid of that victim mentality around sex and sexuality, which sends off a big F you energetically to anyone who even thinks about trying to take you off that stance. So I just find that energy attracts energy, and like attracts like. And so victims tend to give off that I'm able to be victimized. And I don't mean to put them in I've been there, I've been a victim. But until you get out of that mentality, it tends to draw the predator to you, if that makes sense. So that would be how I view the stepping into your sexual power. It's really mostly about the confidence it gives you and the communication skills you develop through that, having those types of talks with your partner and your family and that spill over into all those other aspects that give you confidence that when you're in the workplace, now you're more assertive.
Heather, thank you. And I think you pointed to a couple of things that are worth noting. This whole idea of sexual harassment in the workplace and how there is now such an outcry from women who have experienced sexual harassment and really negative consequences for being strong and honoring their boundaries and not giving in to the demands of others in the workplace for sexual indiscretions, right? So in my mind, action on injustice related to sexuality has got to be a priority. And this could mean challenging the way in which women simply do not conform to social, economic, or political norms. And oftentimes they're isolated. Or maybe it's about pressing for policy and law reform. So how do you see social justice and equality kind of intersecting with the realization of sexual rights?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was the International Women's Health Organization who I recently pulled some data from, and part of it is just getting an agreement about what those rights are, and from an international or even national perspective. And there's a lot of current laws in different places that are established, but it's not allowing discretions to go unchecked. Right. We work with a couple of companies. One of them is called LeadHERship. And this is a young girl who, of course, had a rape assault in another country, went through the system, was just aghast at how lack of support there was for the kit and the testing to get the DNA to properly prosecute the offenders. And so she created a home rape kit, right? And getting that into the hands within 2 hours of somebody that's had a violation so that they feel like they're confident that they can go to the authorities and that the authorities will have the proper information. Because I think right now they say less than 1 or 2% of actual rapes get prosecuted and convicted. And that's a low number. I mean, that is a low number. Do we sit around and say that standard is okay? Or do we support companies like LeadHERship who are looking to make a difference? And do we share this resources with people that we know? And do we donate to a nonprofit that's doing work in the area to help get reform done on a state by state, if that's the case level, and eventually, the whole world? I mean, there's still countries where women, female genitalia is being mutilated, or honor killings are still happening, or arranged marriages of children of the age of 13 are going on. And women still don't even have dominion and or physical rights over their own body. I think I said to you, Linda, in our podcast, like, I can't think of one country that it's okay for a heterosexual male to have his genitalia mutilated and not have any recourse for that, and or for somebody to honor kill him and get away with it. I can't think of one, right? So women all over the world get to stand up for those rights by helping to define them, memorialize them, put them into places and give systems for enforcing them. And also going through, personally, I believe, your own 4 pillars, and the 5th was communication, being able to communicate those other 4, is really important, because once you're clear about that and once you have that confidence, you're not as afraid to speak up. I think because society, and just like Linda, you talked about, some people weren't clear, why were we having this talk on LeadHERship Global? Is this what LeadHERship Global is about, and how sex and sexuality coming to play here? There's still a lot of people that are like, we shouldn't talk about this subject. This is inappropriate. We can't discuss these things. But sadly, that's not working. That's not working for women. And I believe that at the core of the gender gap, if we can even step aside from social injustice, or what I call crimes against humanity and sex crimes against humanity, from a pay and equal opportunity perspective, until we get to the sexual gap, that sexual inequality, the fact that a man won't be able to get his genitalia mutilated, but a woman is still having that happen and people aren't persecuting the offenders, there's no way to close that other gap, if that makes sense. There's still that way down here at a gender level, at a basic human rights level, and dominion over our bodies and permission to persecute anybody who violates those basic human rights. Until that's addressed, the gender gap is never going to close. In my humble opinion, it's still the difference between the genders is our sex in most cases, right? So we have to be brave. We have to be willing to have these difficult conversations and be vulnerable about it and powerful at the same time, if that makes sense. And I think we're so worried about how people view us, and they're going to judge us if we have these difficult conversations or say, hey, I'm okay with sexuality. And they're like, don't talk about sex or politics or religion to me. You know, those are kind of like the three. People are like, stay away from those subjects. Those are dangerous, right? But they also hold behind them a lot of power. And so get comfortable and choose where you feel that you can make an impact and where you're powerfully led from a heart level. You know, like if you've been raped, you probably will have a lot of desire to help solve some of the problems in that category. That just kind of is natural because we can relate to that. We can understand the need to fix that. If you were molested as a child, you probably want to fix the child molestation problem that we have. If you were sex trafficked, you'd probably really be passionate. Or if you have kids and you're just like anything kid related, if you're about education and you see that there's 4 times the number of STIs, teen rapes, teen pregnancies in the United States than there are in Europe, you go, we need to fix our education problem here. There's an educational problem that needs to be addressed for, you know, young adults learning about sex and sexuality. And there's a lot to learn from other countries and other people just in general, or even indigenous cultures about these subjects. And then do a little something every day, week, or year, and or be in support of other women when they say this is something important that they want to do. If you feel aligned with that, then just be supportive. Be an ear, listen to others and say, it's okay. I'm okay to talk about that subject with you. I want to be here for you as your friend. And let's get you the resources you need, you know, compassion.
I love that, Heather. And I feel like, you know, certainly our relationship is based on that kind of transparency and openness and honesty, which I'm so incredibly grateful for. So thank you. So to wrap up, looking at our time, we only have about 10 minutes left. And, you know, I love that you're wrapping up this conversation about this idea of having compassion for yourself as well as others. And, you know, if you were to wrap up the conversation thinking about what you would like to offer to the audience listening in right now and the audience that will be listening to this a month from now, what would you recommend to women who are interested in truly embracing their sexual power, really stepping into that sexual power to propel their business and personal relationships forward? We've talked about the 4 pillars, but if they were to say, I just need to sort of move past some of my entrenched beliefs, I need to move past some of my shame, I need to move past some of my trauma, and I really want to embrace this idea of sexual power to propel my relationships forward, whether they're personal or business, what would you recommend to those women who are ready to really embrace this idea of empowerment in the sexual realm?
Prioritize it, number 1. And then commit to it, number 2. And what I mean by that is, you know, we spend all this time educating ourselves to further our career. And we spend a lot of time taking assessments to try to decide what career we should be in. And we go to school for 8 years. Nobody comes out of the womb with a sexual manual or a relationship manual. And there's so much of our life that is spent in relationship, and that also, you know, hinges on that sexuality and sexual health and sexual well-being. Give it the power that it and the credit and or the authority that it deserves, realize that it is a critical part of the whole package, and then spend a little time and energy going through those, 4 pillars at whatever pace makes sense for you. Find a medium that supports where you're at. What I love about Please Me is it's free, number one, it's anonymous, number two, and it's chock full of everything and anything, dating, relationships, sex, sexuality. So I wanted it to be an aggregator of all things so that people could find other people that are similar to them. They could learn more about their preferences. They could find resources to get that healing, the self-love, identify their core beliefs. Just sometimes talking with other people who've been what you've been through, like if there is a sexual trauma, oh my God, I'm not the only one. Oh my God, you felt that way too. Oh, this is what worked for you and this is where you got the help, and it's anonymous. That is so powerful sometimes. Just knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that, and not that we want anyone else to have experienced that. That's not what I mean, but like we feel so isolated and alone in our journey that having some others to interact with is powerful. And for me, I needed that anonymity and that digital resource, which then led me to the confidence to go get an actual coach. And then I found a coach through reading some things and looking around and went, which coach is right for me? Oh, I really am aligning with this coach. And now I'm going to go and either take their online course if I'm still not ready to get face-to-face, or I'm going to engage them in a more meaningful way. Because these things are like anything else, we have to learn and then apply and then integrate what we've learned and applied, right? And create a new, even neural pathway in the brain, and then habit pattern or way of living. And so that doesn't just go, here you go, read a book, I'm in, I'm done. You need to apply and integrate. So I would say give yourself time, compassion, understanding, and don't put a time limit on it, but a priority and a dedication and commitment to it.
Yeah, so smart, Heather. Now, I know that this is can be a charged topic for a lot of folks, but I want to open up the floor and say, if you have any comments, if you have any experiences you want to share, if you have any questions, would love to hear from you. You're welcome to put that into the chat, or you're welcome to come off mute and simply dive right in, whatever is most comfortable for you. And is someone coming off mute?
Karen.
It's Karen.
Hi,
Hey.
Karen.
Hi. I have a 17, almost 18-year-old daughter, and she works a lot with the United Nations organization Girl Up. And they've kind of danced around this topic a little bit over, but not directly. And there's no education in the schools or anything for these girls, which, they do like the embarrassing, weird sex education class when you're like 11 or 12, which was, I think, traumatic at the time. She came home crying and laughing. So I think that what you're talking about needs to be integrated into curriculum for boys and girls in a real meaningful way. And then also I was going to ask you, she's leaving for college, and is probably going to be, she is going to be involved with Girl Up ongoing, but she works with the National United Nations group and everything. And I'd like for her to hear this presentation. And I don't know if you work with younger, like college or teen girls, but I can see this being a very valuable presentation and discussion. And she actually moderates panels, like she'll bring politicians in, that kind of thing. I can see this being a really great thing for the girls. So she's not here, she's with her dad right now, but I would like to share this with her. And if she could reach out to you, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no, I would love that and be happy to. And actually, we are an adult platform for 21 and up, but there's like a partner that we have that's called OK So, and it's all PhD or counselors or psychologists, and they particularly provide support and education for that teen group and or young adult group. OKAYSO is their website. And what I would like to do is to be a part of having those discussions with leaders and bringing together the education content experts that are all over Please Me. We have over 450 thought leaders, brands, channels, healers, and educators. because there's a number of them that are very passionate about this subject, which is we need to get better education into the school. So I'm a huge advocate of it, but I also, we want to keep the platform that's for adults
Oh, yeah.
So children don't get integrated into it. But me talking on a panel to kids, I'm thrilled to do something like that. And I would promote OK So as a partner of ours instead of sending them to Please Me unless they're 21 or over. And getting, into conversations with like the UN and how can we take Europe's model of education where pleasure is included and it's not just the, oh my God, you're going to die, you're going to get a disease, you're going to get raped, and here's your organs kind of a training, because pleasure is also our birthright. And we need to honor that as well. So happy to be and would be honored to be part of those discussions and connect the right, people together for that.
Right. She's also worked with the genital mutilation topic as well. And I wish she was here to add to this because she's talked to some experts in that field as well, which I think could, for a universal global approach to this, somebody with that expertise and commentary would be really great. So
you can share, actually, if Dorothy is able to, or if not, I'll get it out to Linda, but we did a series on, you can just go to YouTube and type in Please Me social reform. And there's a series of 14 3 to 5 minute videos in which I dive into how I feel Please Me has the power to change different areas of the world. And one is gender-based violence, sexual and domestic violence, teen STIs, rapes, and there's 14. And so they're little short vignettes about what we're up to and how we're going to utilize the technology that you could share with those people at the UN. And your daughter, it's safe for really any age other than that.
I will definitely get those resources from Heather and share them with you, and everyone will get a copy of this recording as well. So really do appreciate everyone's time. Karen, thank you for sharing. And Karen, thank you so much for sharing about your daughter. I mean, I know how amazing your daughter is, but now everyone else does too. She's just a light. Your daughter is amazing. And that's largely because she had an amazing mom. So Karen, thank you for sharing. And everyone, thank you for joining today about this really important topic. And if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to Heather. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about LeadHERship Global, would love to connect with you personally and tell you more about our incredible community of amazing women around the globe, many of whom are on this call today. So thank you guys so much for joining today. Really appreciate it. And thank you also for all the wonderful positive feedback that I'm seeing in the chat. Informative presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for pulling this together. Thank you, Sharon or Heather, for sharing. And then also one of the participants, SX Noir, I don't know her real name, but we'll call her SX, included a ton of really great information in the chat. So be sure to copy it. It's all about OK So. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, please be sure to copy the chat. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad you were here today and look forward to connecting again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.